Good afternoon, everyone. In the face of Trump's tariff tax, New Brunswick, alongside Team Canada, is ready to defend our economy. Our team will use every tool in our toolbox to help support New Brunswickers and help end these tariffs. New Brunswick Liquor sells $40 million worth of American alcohol products in our stores. I have directed NB Liquor to cease purchasing U.S. alcohol and to remove their products from the shelves. Face aux taxes douanières de Trump, Nouveau-Brunswick, avec l'équipe du Canada, est prêt à défendre notre économie. Notre équipe utilisera tous les outils à sa disposition pour défendre et soutenir les gens de Nouveau-Brunswick et pour aider à mettre fin à ces tarifs. Alcool Nouveau-Brunswick vend environ 40 millions en produits alcoolisés américains dans nos magasins. J'ai demandé à Alcool Nouveau-Brunswick d'arrêter d'acheter de l'alcool des États-Unis et de retirer leurs produits des étagères. I've also directed the Public Service to complete a number of actions, including immediately reviewing the government's procurement and to stop signing deals with United States companies, except for critical services that cannot immediately be replaced. J'ai également demandé à la fonction publique de prendre certaines mesures, y compris d'examiner immédiatement les sources d'approvisionnement du gouvernement et arrêter la signature d'ententes avec des entreprises des États-Unis, sauf dans le cas où il agit de services critiques pour les gens de Nouveau-Brunswick qui ne peuvent pas être remplacés immédiatement. I've asked Opportunities New Brunswick and the Department of Post-Secondary Education, Training and Labor to finalize, in line with federal supports, our programs to support workers and entrepreneurs. Details will be announced soon. We are participating in an aggressive review of internal trade barriers to strengthen the Canadian economy in collaboration with federal, provincial, and territorial governments. And as we have in the past, New Brunswick will lead the way in reducing barriers and eliminating exemptions. We will continue to seek other measures that New Brunswick can take to protect its workers and our economy. J'ai demandé à l'Opportunité Nouveau-Brunswick et le ministère d'Éducation postsecondaire, de la Formation et du Travail de mettre au point les programmes pour soutenir les travailleurs et les entrepreneurs en harmonie avec le soutien offert par le gouvernement fédéral. Les détails seront annoncés bientôt. On va examiner de façon audacieuse les obstacles du commerce à l'intérieur afin de renforcer l'économie canadienne en collaboration avec les gouvernements fédéraux, provinciaux et territoriaux. Nouveau-Brunswick va continuer d'être un leader en éliminant les barrières à l'échange autour de notre pays et nos exemptions aussi. Puis on va continuer à cerner d'autres mesures que le Nouveau-Brunswick pourrait prendre pour protéger ses travailleurs et son économie. Ma plus grande priorité est de protéger les travailleurs de Nouveau-Brunswick et les entreprises de notre belle province. Il est plus important que jamais de renforcer notre économie, d'acheter des produits canadiens et de Nouveau-Brunswick et de nous unir pour démontrer la résilience de notre peuple et de notre province. My number one priority is to protect New Brunswick workers and businesses. It's more important than ever to build up our economy, to buy Canadian and buy New Brunswick, and come together to demonstrate the resilience of our people and our province. Merci. Thank you.
Merci, la Première Ministre. Thank you, Premier. We will now go to questions. And since we have quite a few on the line, we will just start by doing one journalist from each outlet and then loop back around if we have time. So starting with Jacques Poitras, CBC.
Hello, can you hear me okay? One question, one follow?
Yes.
So you talk about stopping signing deals with U.S. companies unless they can't be replaced. What are we talking about in terms of dollar value or the scope of that? Like, how big is that really?
That's a good question, Jacques. We don't have the dollar figures for what's on the docket to be signed that we will not sign going forward. Government procurement is significant, but thankfully much of it is Canadian and New Brunswick. So let me get that figure for you.
Okay, and secondly, we're aware of already of one large employer in the province who has said that they could shift their production elsewhere, presumably meaning the US, even if it's temporary until the tariff issue is resolved. Have you heard that from other employers? And what is your concern about that becoming permanent?
Yes, we have heard from a number of employers who have the opportunity to shift production into the US as a temporary measure while the tariffs are in place. I have serious concerns about these tariffs becoming permanent, and it is our goal to remove them as quickly as possible. And so we are looking at ways that we can help businesses defray the cost and the competitive disadvantage that the tariffs bring in place. But we also won't be able to subsidize the full effect of that production to prevent it from going into the US. So it's something that we're looking at on a case-by-case basis.
Thank you, Jacques. Alexandre Boudreau, Acadie Nouvelle.
Ouais, un petit peu dans la même veine. Je voudrais savoir si vous pouvez préciser qu'est-ce que vous voulez dire quand vous disiez. Est-ce que vous m'entendez?
Oui.
OK. Qu'est-ce que vous voulez dire quand vous disiez des services que, dans le fond, vous allez continuer de conclure des ententes avec des entreprises qui offrent des services qui sont critiques pour les Néo-Brunswickois? C'est quoi les exceptions plus précisément?
Il y a des choses qu'on achète des États-Unis qu'il n'y a pas une option canadienne, il n'y a pas une option locale. Alors, si on ne peut pas remplacer le produit ou le service avec quelque chose d'autre, on ne peut pas arrêter. Il y a des produits médicaux, il y a des choses comme ça qui n'existent pas toujours dans le marché canadien ou d'autre part. Alors, il y a quelque chose qu'on ne peut pas arrêter d'acheter. On doit chercher pour des alternatives.
Mais est-ce que vous avez des exemples de ça? Parce que là, vous annoncez ça, vous donnez cette directive-là à la fonction publique, mais vous ne semblez pas vraiment donner. Vous n'avez pas de chiffres à l'appui. Je comprends que c'est la première journée, mais est-ce que vous avez un petit peu plus de détails sur l'impact que ça va avoir, cette directive-là, de ne plus signer d'entente avec les entreprises des États-Unis?
On peut partager ces chiffres avec vous autres, puis je peux trouver des exemples concrets de quels produits on achète des États-Unis qui n'ont pas un remplacement disponible canadien, si vous voulez ces détails-là.
Merci. J'aimerais aussi savoir encore une fois, pouvez-vous nous donner des exemples, des actions concrètes que vous allez prendre pour réduire les barrières au commerce interprovincial? Le Nouveau-Brunswick est comme la deuxième province qui en a le plus d'exemptions à l'accord de libre-échange entre les provinces. Qu'est-ce que vous allez faire dans ce dossier-là?
Ben, si on regarde le contrat avec l'échange international de Canada, le Nouveau-Brunswick a un de les moindres des exemptions d'autour du Canada, mais on va pousser puis travailler avec nos collègues pour éliminer les exemptions et vraiment mettre en place, enlever les barrières pour ce qu'on peut transporter tous nos produits puis nos services d'un côté de la pays à l'autre sans avoir de barrières qui sont mises en place.
Pardonnez-moi, mais c'est contraire aux informations qu'on a. Le Nouveau-Brunswick serait en fait la deuxième province qui a le plus d'exemptions. Je veux dire, il me semble qu'Erica Butler avait mentionné ça la dernière fois. Pouvez-vous fournir des informations à l'appui de ce que vous avancez, que le Nouveau-Brunswick a le moins d'exemptions?
Oui, on peut partager, c'est dans le CHCO et la liste des exemptions. Nous autres, on a le deuxième moindre, alors on peut partager ça.
Merci.
Merci, Alexandre. Hina Alam, Canadian Press.
Hi, Premier. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about whether Starlink operates in New Brunswick and what will be done to reduce dependence on Starlink, especially in rural areas.
Thanks, Hina. To my understanding, some New Brunswickers have contracts with Starlink to receive their internet services. I can check. It's not to my knowledge that the government of New Brunswick has a contract with Starlink, but I will double check on that information. We certainly wouldn't prevent New Brunswickers from accessing an internet service of their choice. That's their they can choose how they want to spend their money and what services they want to purchase. But I can check and see what the government of New Brunswick's contracts look like with Starlink. I'm not aware of any, as I say. So I can get back to you on that.
Okay. And the other thing, it's a more general question. I was wondering if you could comment on on this patriotic surge that you're now seeing among Canadians. What have you experienced about it? And is there an anti-American sentiment right now?
Oh, I certainly think that we are seeing a beautiful surge of Maple Leafs and people actively looking for ways that they can celebrate Canadian producers and Canadian products. I see people messaging and posting daily about where they've found Canadian products, which thing they're stopping to buy, which one they are going to buy. And it's really heartening to see New Brunswickers out there supporting our local companies and their products. And I think that comes alongside a bit of an anti-American sentiment, a frustration that our closest neighbor and trading partner has decided to treat us this way. And so I have heard the frustrations that folks have expressed toward American products and this decision by Donald Trump.
Thanks, Hina. We'll now go to Frédéric Camarano, Radio-Canada.
Bonjour, Madame la Première ministre. Je voulais savoir aussi concernant les sources d'approvisionnement que vous allez étudier. Est-ce qu'il y a des contrats contraignants là-dedans? Donc, est-ce que vous seriez prêt à déchirer ces contrats auxquels il pourrait y avoir des pénalités finalement?
On fait l'analyse à ce moment de s'il y a des contrats qu'on peut sortir avec une opportunité de remplacement local et sans des pénalités. On ne veut pas ajouter des coûts au budget du Nouveau-Brunswick à un moment où clairement on aura un impact négatif fiscal de ces tarifs. Alors, on fait l'analyse de notre approvisionnement et notre plan, c'est de ne pas entrer dans des contrats avec des services américains pour le futur. Mais on va aussi regarder si on peut remplacer des autres contrats avec une option canadien ou peut-être de quelque part d'autre.
Puis, concernant l'achat local dont on parle beaucoup dernièrement, il y a plusieurs experts qui ont dit que les gouvernements doivent aider les Canadiens à déterminer finalement quels sont les produits qui sont véritablement canadiens et ceux qui ne le sont pas. Est-ce que le gouvernement du Nouveau-Brunswick compte faire quelque chose pour mieux indiquer au Néo-Brunswickois, bien, ce produit-là est canadien, celui-ci est américain, celui-ci est mexicain, etc.?
Oui, il y a beaucoup de travail qui se passe dans ce domaine-là. Vous serez peut-être familier avec des sites web, des campagnes de saveurs Nouveau-Brunswick, le travail d'opportunité Nouveau-Brunswick qui fait la promotion de les achats locaux, puis qui démontre toutes les options que vous pouvez choisir ici et là. On demande aux épiceries de marquer clairement sur leur étagère, c'est d'où vient le produit pour qu'on peut aider les gens à acheter canadien. Il y a deux différents types d'affiches qu'ils peuvent mettre pour déterminer le contenu canadien d'un produit. Alors, oui, c'est quelque chose qu'on essaie d'aider à toujours à promouvoir. C'est quoi les options néo-brunswickoises, c'est quoi les options canadiennes qu'on peut choisir.
Merci, Frédéric. We will now go to Jillian Piper, Global News.
Hi, Premier. Thanks for taking our questions. Sorry, feedback there. Is that better?
I can hear you.
Okay, excellent. I was wondering if you would support withholding energy exports from the United States.
Withholding energy exports is a tough one because it has a direct impact on New Brunswick as well as a significant impact on Canada. So it's something that we've always held as a bit of a tool of last resort in these negotiations. It's something that comes with a lot of negative impact for our province and our country, but obviously has a significant impact on the US. So we're not at that point yet, and I do have some deep concerns about it.
Thank you. And just to follow up, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith said she noted the reduced 10% tariff for Canadian energy was partially a recognition of the advocacy undertaken by her government and industry to the U.S. administration. Do you believe that premiers should be doing individual advocacy on their own files on this issue?
I think every premier is doing advocacy to their governors, senators, congress people that are most closely integrated with their economies. Certainly I have, and my colleagues in the Atlantic have been reaching out to New England governors, governors of Louisiana, senators, congress people, and that's a big part of our mission down to Washington on February 12th is to continue to advocate for our shared interests in between many of our states and provinces. And so I think every premier is contributing by passing on the message to our allies and to leaders in the US of how damaging these tariffs are going to be on Americans. And the more we can make that point through the more people and the more ways, I think the better chance we'll have at eliminating the tariffs.
Thanks, Jillian. Adam Harris, Telegraph Journal.
Thanks, Premier, for taking our questions. You addressed it in French there briefly, but wanted the breadth of your response in English as well, in terms of why not cancel existing deals with the United States. Some other provinces have moved towards that. I guess maybe, if you could talk about the size of the deals that we have in place and if there's anything critical, but also why not just cancel them and find a Canadian replacement?
Yeah, there's a couple of reasons why we wouldn't just cancel the contract outright because its holder was American. One, there's cancellation fees and costs to that. Two, there's the disruption and the time to replace. And for certain critical services, we wouldn't want to destabilize the economy more than these tariffs have already done. And so we're going through the process of identifying which things that we would typically buy American or have in the past where we can transfer those purchases to Canadian companies or alternate companies, and which things we can't because those alternatives don't exist, in order to determine what kind of impact that could have on the American economy as we reduce American procurement from the government of New Brunswick.
Thanks. And just to follow up, in the lead up to deciding on Canadian counter tariffs, you said New Brunswick was offering its suggestions to Ottawa. We now have that full list, and it looks like to me there's some things on there that may have been a unique ask of you, because we have things like paper factories and pulp and paper mills, and those are things on the counter tariff list. Can you tell us now what you specifically called the Canadian counter tariffs to be put on?
Well, it was a back and forth for sure of making sure that the import products that we were going to be putting tariffs on didn't directly impact New Brunswick businesses that are highly integrated. So things like lobsters and blueberries that go back and forth across the border a number of times, we had concern. We were looking at some of the core inputs to products that New Brunswickers use to make their own products and solutions. So there's different fertilizers, different grains, different seeds, that kind of thing that affect industry here, different equipment that is critical to some of our manufacturers that we didn't want to see import tariffs on. So it's been a back and forth all the way through as we've built a list that has gone from $30 billion to $125 billion worth of impact on U.S. products.
What were the things you did want to see on the list, though?
That we did want to see on the list? Well, we're keen to see things on the list that we can easily replace with New Brunswick products. So that's partly where things like alcohol comes in. We thought that consumer products were an appropriate place for tariffs because there's lots of alternatives in those marketplaces and they don't directly impact our manufacturers or our our companies here. So we were happy to see a focus on impacting the states and the people who are going to be most influential around President Trump.
Thank you.
Thanks, Adam. Damien Dauphin, La Moneda Acadienne.
Excuse me. Wait a minute. Where am I? Well, actually, all my colleagues have asked the question I wanted to ask. So, j'ai rien à ajouter. Merci beaucoup, Madame la Première ministre.
Merci, Damien.
Nick Moore, CTV.
Thank you for the opportunity. Hi, Premier. We're hearing a lot from individuals who are wondering what they can do on an individual basis at this time. And you've talked a lot about buying American or buying Canada, sorry. But would you go further? We're hearing also from premiers who are encouraging people to just not go to the States, cancel vacations. Any message on that, especially for people on border communities who in some cases go back and forth to buy stuff multiple times a day?
Yeah, I think that's exactly the message, Nick, is that we would love to see New Brunswickers supporting New Brunswick and Canada at a time like this. And that's with their grocery dollars as well as with their tourism and their vacation purchases. So we know that in New Brunswick, there are thousands of different places that you could visit and have an exceptional vacation. And there are wonderful things to see and things to eat and to experience all over our province and certainly in Atlantic Canada and the rest of the country. And so I would happily join with other premiers in encouraging people to shift their vacations from American destinations to Canadian ones and specifically to New Brunswick destinations, because there is so much to explore and enjoy in this picture province, and we would love for people to take the opportunity to do that more than ever in this year ahead.
All right, thank you for that. And not to put the horse before the cart, but we're hearing from the president of Mexico that tariffs there will be delayed by a month. And we know there's a conversation with the prime minister late this afternoon. If that does happen here, if there is a delay, what does that change in the plan that you're putting out right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. Our measures are obviously meant to be retaliatory measures. So if it turns out that tariffs aren't going in place at midnight tonight, based on a conversation with President Trump and Prime Minister Trudeau, and listen, that's what we hope will happen, then we'll reconsider because the goal of these things was to really eliminate the tariffs as quickly as possible. We want a free, fair, strong, open trading relationship with our closest neighbor and ally. And so if that's what we can accomplish in the conversation today, then that will mean that these retaliatory measures will no longer be necessary.
Thanks, Nick. Lindsay Jones, Globe and Mail.
Hi, Premier Holt. I wanted to ask you what you're doing right now, and what are the discussions with other premiers in Atlantic Canada around protecting the seafood industry?
Well, that is one of the conversations that we're having, because seafood in general has been put on the list for some import tariffs, and we want to get down into the definitions of that to make sure that some of our more integrated seafood products can be exempted from those import tariffs. And then there is some initial conversations happening about distribution partners and logistics opportunities to take some of the services we would have been using in the US and see if we can't replicate them to get product to Asia without having to go through the US to begin with.
And so what is the expected impact on the seafood industry currently?
The expected impact is significant. The seafood industry is probably about the third largest exporter to the US that we have here in New Brunswick. So it represents a significant amount of economic activity. There's a significant dollar value of product that goes from New Brunswick into the US. And so these 25% tariffs are going to make it very challenging for those producers to find the price that they need in that marketplace and to really be able to compete on a cost for cost basis with other alternatives. So the hit is going to be felt really heavily in the seafood sector, and we know the boats are out getting ready to fish now. So it's something that we're working very closely with the seafood associations and with our colleagues at the federal government to provide the right support and the right strategy to the seafood industry.
Thank you. Vicky Bogart, CHCO.
Thank you, Katie. Premier Holt, given that goods traveling to Campobello Island must transit through the U.S. under bond, do you anticipate any changes to these bonding requirements as a result of tariffs? And should islanders be concerned that, given their unique geography, that they might be in a more difficult and/or expensive situation?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Vicky, because you're right that Campobello is in a very unique situation, and the fact that much of their Canadian goods comes to them through the US and is exposed to bonds, as you say, it makes them particularly vulnerable. It's something that we've been trying to get clarity on as to whether there's going to be a shift in the US to some of those processes and fees to see if there's ways that we can get approval for those Canadian goods to get through to Campobello because they're not getting unloaded or unpacked in the US, which those exemptions do exist in some cases if you're moving something from one country to another through a third country. And if it doesn't get opened or touched down, then you can get classification as a pass through. So it's something that we're trying to get clarity for the folks of Campobello who should be rightfully worried that this is going to have a negative impact on them.
And my follow-up would be if these tariffs do go on for a long period of time and Canada's relationship with the U.S. continue to be complicated, would considering the idea of a year-round ferry again, as we did in the time of COVID, be something that's on the table for the island?
Oh, the question of a year-round ferry has never come off the table, to my knowledge. It's something that's still being discussed, being evaluated for the different options of what that looks like, whether it's from here to there, or you've probably seen all the different proposals the same way I have, Vicky, of the different suggestions that the community has made and others have made about the best way to service Campobello so that they have clear and permanent connection to Canada that isn't through the US. So those have been ongoing as long as I've been around. And I think maybe this tariff conversation adds a little oomph to that conversation, but it's never gone away.
Thank you.
Thanks, Vicky. David Gordon Koch, MP Media Co-op.
Hi there, Premier Holt. Are you aware of any specific effects that tariffs might have on the economics, on the economies of First Nations in New Brunswick?
Well, that's a good question, David. Thank you for that. I'm not aware of unique effects that these tariffs will have on First Nations communities in New Brunswick who are similar to other New Brunswick communities reliant on a significant amount of sales into the US for their products and services. I know many First Nations businesses in New Brunswick that would be their next port of sale as they market their products beyond our borders. And so similarly with when we looked at applying import tariffs and we looked at who might be impacted by the list that we built, we had a sense of who's purchasing what from around our entire province and collected that information, and the purchasing behaviors weren't different First Nations communities to other communities. So I don't have any specific examples today of areas where particular First Nations communities would be more hurt than others.
Yeah, the reason I ask is because for example, lobster exports, that seems like I think that might be a revenue source for certain First Nations. Just wondering if you're meeting with First Nations to talk about these issues or have plans to do so.
So the lobster producers are part of the seafood producers associations, and so the conversations we've been having on lobster include both First Nations and non-Indigenous lobster producers or fishers, I should say. So when we talk about lobster, yes, there are a number of First Nations communities that would be impacted as that's one of their core revenue generators, the same way that it's a revenue generator for a number of other communities. So, in thinking about unique to First Nations, that's different than the point that you're making. We also have a couple First Nations communities that are very integrated with the U.S. as we look at the Beskotamakati down at on the western border, and then up to the Madawaska. The Madawaska First Nation up in Edmundston, where they see a significant amount of traffic and trade done with Americans. So there's different realities in different places.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, David. Brad Perry, Acadia Broadcasting.
Thanks, Katie. Good afternoon, Premier. I'm wondering if there is a timeline at this point when it comes to those programs for workers and entrepreneurs that you mentioned. I know you said the details are announced soon. Is this something we're looking at in the coming days? Is this a week or so out? What can you tell us about a possible timeline for that?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Brad. We are working to get those pieces fine-tuned, some of it in partnership with the federal government. So I suspect that after we have our regular First Ministers meeting this Wednesday, that should give us some clarity on what we can finalize. So my hope is that we would have it by end of this week, but my commitment will be early next week.
Excellent. And in terms of there's a lot of conversation around Buy Canada, Buy New Brunswick. I know you discussed that a little bit earlier on as well. What will your government be doing in particular to help promote New Brunswick-specific products and producers to help encourage residents of our province to buy from them?
Yeah, we're really we've long been a promoter of buy local and put information in front of New Brunswickers through various efforts from the Department of Agriculture, Aquaculture and Fisheries to Opportunities New Brunswick, to celebrate and highlight different New Brunswick success stories and to support organizations that are doing Made in NB promotions, Savor New Brunswick, Saveur Nouveau-Brunswick, different initiatives that have been done to help label and group and draw attention to New Brunswick products. And so we're going to take all of that effort and put it on steroids. You'll see Minister Randall and others on a daily basis promoting which products you can go and find on the grocery shelves here in New Brunswick, and which businesses we want to encourage everyone to support right now when we need it more than ever.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thanks, Brad. Erica Butler, CHMA.
I'm okay, thanks. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Erica. Don McPherson, the Fredericton Independent.
Can you hear me? Yeah, okay. On the issue of the MB liquor boycott, 40 million sounds like a big number, but in the grand scheme of things in international trade, it's probably a drop in the bucket for American producers. Does New Brunswick have the buying power to, at least on that end of things, to really deliver a bite back to the Americans on this issue?
Well, Dominic, I think you've said it yourself. We can do what we can do, and that 40 million is more than nothing. And when you pair it with the efforts that our colleagues in other provinces are doing, I think removal of U.S. alcohol across all of Canada will have a noticeable impact on the U.S., even if our portion of that is small. It's something that we're willing to do, and comes with the added benefit of hopefully directing New Brunswickers towards New Brunswick products on the shelves instead, and getting familiar with some of the amazing spirits and beers and other things that we produce right here at home.
As a follow-up, will the boycott policy apply in agency stores as well, which are run by private sector partners?
Thanks for asking. That's a good distinction to make. Right now, we're going to be pulling product from the shelves of NB liquor stores, and we're going to stop ordering for everyone. But we're going to respect the space of agency stores to sell through what they have stocked on their shelves right now, because we do have some storage constraints and other things that some of our agencies are facing that they won't be able to pull or put aside the product. So agencies do get a little more room to maneuver there.
Just to follow up on something you mentioned a moment ago, obviously this is a difficult situation, a concerning situation, but as we saw through COVID, it's also a situation in which some sectors can benefit. Are there opportunities here? You talked about small alcohol producers in the province, distilleries, breweries, having opportunities. Is this going to renew discussions with, say, microbreweries to get more of their stuff on shelves? They've been sort of struggling with NB Liquor over that. Is this going to renew a conversation and change the water in the beans, so to speak?
Well, I think it is an opportunity for some companies, and we saw that. I think when I was told by some folks in the agriculture sector that they saw an opportunity to expand their customer base back when the original tariffs were put in place on steel and aluminum and some other things, and the way that retaliatory strategy worked meant that they could both expand their position at the time. And so I think we'll hopefully see some of that happening where New Brunswickers discover Canadian products and start to purchase it in greater and greater quantities, and that's the closest customer to our producers, and so could help to offset for sure. And then when the tariffs are removed and the U.S. market comes back, hopefully that will mean that our New Brunswick producers have that much more business than when all of this started. So that's certainly the hope, is we can take this opportunity to switch some of our buying habits over to local products and then regain our competitive position in the U.S. as we get these tariffs removed.
Thank you.
Thanks, Don. Elsa Iskander, CHCO-TV. Not hearing anything. Alex Johnson, All New Brunswick.
Good afternoon, Premier. I was wondering, when it comes to internal trade barriers, if you could talk about what specific barriers New Brunswick is looking to eliminate.
Oh, getting into the specifics of which exemptions we currently have in place that we might be willing to pull away from. Those are negotiations we're having at the table with the other premiers and with the other representatives of other provinces at the Committee on Internal Trade to figure out if we can get the harmonization that we're looking for and get the reduction of exemptions across the board from other provinces so that we can then remove ours here as well.
And just to follow up on the American contracts, what currently does the province contract for with American companies in existing contracts?
Well, there's a number of things that American companies provide to New Brunswick, a mix of things from products that we use to build our roads and bridges to some of the companies that do that work for us, technology platforms and technology solutions, different books and textbooks that come in from the US, different medical supplies, equipment, and drugs that come in from the US. So there's a long list of things that we buy from the US right now that goes across all sorts of different facets of our government operations. And so there's work to be done to find replacements for many of those sources.
Thank you.
Thank you. And just really quickly, we'll go to Anna Amanda in Global News.
Do you see a cost of shifting away from U.S. companies in procurement? And if so, how will this impact your commitment to a balanced budget?
Yeah, that's a great question, Anna, because typically one of the reasons why we end up purchasing from the US is because their price point is better, and they would win an RFP on the basis of the cost competitiveness of their bid or proposal. And so oftentimes moving to another supplier in another market comes with an increased cost. So that's something we have to evaluate as we look at our opportunities to replace U.S. contracts with Canadian or European or alternate ones, and see whether there's cancellation costs, whether there's significant price differences. The reality is that these tariffs and the shift in the economic landscape that they've brought is meaning that we're really having to look much more aggressively at the size and the scope of the kind of cuts that we'll need to make to the cost of doing government in order to achieve a balanced budget. So that's across procurement, it's across all of the operations of government as we strive to get as close to balance as possible in the face of significantly declining revenues and a major shift in both the economic forecast and the cost profile of doing business.
Do you have a sense of how extensive those cuts will be?
Oh, we're working on the budget right now. So that's something that the team is doing over these next many weeks as we prepare to table it in the House in March. And so we're looking at all the different forecasts that we could leverage. We're looking at all the different things that we might be able to reduce or stop doing, but it's going to be significant.
A news and public affairs production of CHCO-TV, New Brunswick's only source for independent community television.